Hey, what's up? The problem with chefs like me is that when they develop recipes, they cannot resist the urge to take a simple dish and ruin it by making it too complicated. I know, let's add $30 a pound cheese and truffles to this dish just to make sure that I look good and no one else can recreate it. This is annoying behavior and I try my best to avoid it. So in this video, I'm gonna show you guys how to make a simple, classic grilled cheese in tomato soup. The innovation here comes from attention to detail and proper product selection, not chefiness. I'll show you the right bread to use, the right cheese combination, the best tomatoes for the job, and then the basic techniques that I use to cook it all perfectly. To get started, I'll grab 2 onions and some peeled garlic. To prep the onion, I'll give it a simple rustic dice by removing the poles and slicing latitudinally 5 or 6 times. Then I'll turn 90 degrees and thinly chop every quarter inch or so. A quick reminder that this soup is going to be pureed, so there's no need for fancy knife skills. We just want the whole onion to be broken down into smaller pieces, and in total I need about 300 grams. Next, I'll take quite a lot of garlic, or about 10 cloves worth, and smash them through my garlic press. If you don't have a press, hand mincing with a knife is totally fine here. In total, we need about 40 grams. Next, I'll grab a deep 3 to 4 quart saucepan and drop it on the stove over medium heat. Once that's hot, I'll add in a long squeezer of olive oil. I'm talking about 8 seconds maybe? That'll end up being about 40 grams. This olive oil is very important to the final texture of the soup, so we need a lot. Next, I'll add in all of my rough chopped onions, my minced garlic, 15 grams of salt, then I'll jump in, stir to combine, and sweat these onions and garlic over medium heat for about 5 to 7 minutes. During this stage, I don't want any browning or caramelizing though. Those darker flavors are really intense and they'll step on the clean, bright flavor of the tomato. After 7-ish minutes, you can see that the onions and garlic are melty looking and translucent. So from here, I'm gonna add in a big dollop of tomato paste, or 40 grams worth. Then I'll stir that in and fry it off for 2 minutes. I personally think it's nice to fry the tomato paste to open up its tinny canned flavor, but if you're in a rush, you can skip this step and jump forward to the part where we add in 2 cans of nice tasting whole peeled tomatoes. A good test to see if your tomatoes are nice tasting is to eat them right out of the can. These organic Muir Glen tomatoes cost $4, so I assumed that they would be great for tomato soup, but then I tasted them.
It's so tart and it's really watery.
These are good for chili or something where they're going to be mixed with a bunch of other stuff, but they're not ideal for tomato soup. On the other hand, these Bianco di Napoli tomatoes also cost $4.
It's fruity, it's jammy, it's sweet, and the acidity is actually in balance. If you gave me some salt, I would eat a lot of that straight up.
Unfortunately, price is not the best indicator of canned tomato quality. Steer clear of watery, tart tomatoes and gravitate towards chunky, fruity, sweet ones. My 2 favorite brands right now are Cento and Bianco di Napoli. Behind the tomatoes, I'll add in 600 grams of boxed chicken stock, then 35 grams of sugar. I know, this seems like a ton of sugar, but tomato soup without sweetness is painfully acidic. Next, in goes 1 Chipotle chili in Adobo. This brings a subtle warmth and a little bit of smoke to the soup. It enhances the tomato flavor here in the same way that coffee enhances chocolate flavor. It's kind of like a secret ingredient.
It's not even that hot, dude. It's not even that hot. I'm fine.
Lastly, I'll add in 25 grams of Better Than Bouillon roasted chicken base. I'm using this to bring some actual meat flavor to this soup. That box stock that we used a second ago is basically here as cooking liquid. It doesn't really have a lot of flavor. Once this is all stirred to combine, I'll bring up to a spirited simmer, then turn the heat down to medium low and cook for 15 to 20 minutes, stirring every 3 to 5. While that cooks, I want to thank Better Than Bouillon for sponsoring this vid and making this soup taste great. If you're not familiar with Better Than Bouillon, it's a concentrated stock paste that's made from actual roasted chicken, in the case of the roasted chicken base that I'm using in this recipe. If you're wondering why I'm adding it to tomato soup, well, it's to enhance the meaty umami flavors that are naturally present in stewy tomatoes and to bring a little extra something that I can't put my finger on. Dropping a scoop of Better Than Bouillon directly into a dish to add some deeper flavor is my favorite way to use it, but you can also use it in place of stock in any recipe that calls for stock. Just add it to water and stir to combine. Better Than Bouillon comes in a ton of other delicious flavors that regularly make appearances in my kitchen, like roasted beef base, seasoned veggie, and roasted garlic. They also carry organic and reduced sodium options if that's your vibe. You can pick up Better Than Bouillon locally in the soup aisle of most grocery stores, or you can find all the wild, fun specialty flavors like lobster over at betterthanbouillon.com. Be sure to use my code Brian for free shipping when you buy 2 or more jars. After 20 minutes of cooking, this soup is looking great. The onions and garlic are soft and sweet, and maybe even more importantly, the whole peeled tomatoes are so stewy that they totally fall apart when I press them into the pot. From here, I'll move the soup over to my blender and spin it up in 2 batches. Quick tip, never fill your blender jar more than halfway when spinning hot stuff because things get really jumpy and the lid can easily pop off and cover your body with boiling hot soup. After 60 seconds on high speed, I'll move the soup over to a pot, then drop in the other half and carefully puree for 1 more minute. If you're wondering about using an immersion blender to puree this, that can work if that's all you got. You just need to adjust your expectations. That soup's going to be considerably more rustic and not have a super smooth texture. At this point, it looks like the soup reduced a little bit more than I thought during the simmer, and it's a little bit thick. So to thin it out, I'm going to add in about 100 to 150 grams of stock and stir that in. This is going to loosen things up and move it more from a tomato puree into a tomato soup. And that's looking great. It's smooth, it's silky, and it's got that looser texture that I'm looking for.
Yo, that tastes so good. And it tastes super tomatoey. Most tomato soups are just creamy, hot orange, and they don't have any distinctive tomato flavor. It's perfectly sweet, the acidity is in balance, and the texture is so silky and smooth. Plus, there's this mysterious smoky chipotle flavor that subtly underlies the whole thing that makes it that much more delicious.
I want to reiterate that this tomato soup has no cream in it, but you wouldn't know it. When you puree that oniony, garlicky olive oil into the soup base, it thickens it and improves the overall body, making it silky and luscious. Cream steps on the tomato flavor and makes the soup very one note. Olive oil is the pro move. Next, let's whip up the fat that the sandwich is going to be fried in. For that, I'll plop 1 stick of butter into a bowl, then grab a fork and knead it for about 30 seconds to soften it. This butter was out on the counter for about 30 minutes, so it's a little bit easier to knead, but if yours is straight out of the fridge, just slice it thinly before kneading and it'll temper really fast that way. Okay, once I've got the butter nice and pliable like this, I'm going to add in 75 grams of mayo. Then I'll knead that in with a fork to get those 2 fats combined into one. In my opinion, the combo of butter and mayonnaise for a grilled cheese is better than butter alone because butter mayo spreads much easier and much more evenly onto the tender bread, meaning it's not going to get torn up, and it browns more evenly. So for me, it's definitely worth the extra 3 to 4 minutes of work to prep it up. Once the mayo and butter are evenly combined, it's time to build this sandwich. For that, I'll drop roughly a tablespoon or 15 grams worth of mayo butter onto 2 slices of Texas toast. T-toast is the best because it has the dumb, sweet softness of white bread, but it's not nearly as fragile or squishy. And more importantly, it's almost 2 times thicker. This enables us to get more cheese per square inch without making a sandwich that's too aggressively cheesy. To spread out this mayo butter, I like to use the back of a spoon. This method is much easier on the bread than a traditional knife would be, and it doesn't tear up this really soft bread. And once I've got this spread into every single little crevice and corner, we're going to move on to drop the cheeses. Layer 1 is a slice of American cheese. It's not grilled cheese without American, full stop. Layer 2 is 5 to 6 thin slices of Gruyere. Since Gruyere isn't widely available as a sliced cheese, the best way to get it into a meltable sandwich friendly state is to use a peeler to shave it like this. Also, Gruyere is available at all of the grocery stores around my house, including Aldi, so I wouldn't consider this one too chefy. Layer 3 is a thin slice of aged provolone from the deli counter. This isn't the pre-sliced stuff from the processed cheese section. And finally, layer 4 is a second slice of American cheese. For me, this blend covers all of the textural and flavoral bases that you need in a grilled cheese. The American cheese brings the melt, and then the other 2 cheeses bring flavor. For alternatives to this specific blend, let's talk about the pre-sliced sandwich cheeses you might have in the fridge right now. I made tester sandwiches with 2 slices of American as my melty base cheese. Then I subbed in 1 thick slice of all the most widely available pre-sliced cheeses to see which one works best as the flavor cheese. The cheddar sandwich was fine. Cheddar gets a little bit grainy when melted though, and it also takes on a light bio flavor. It's passable, but not perfect. I give it a 6 out of 10. Swiss was surprisingly flavorful. It has a light footiness to it, which I think is a plus here, and it melts great. If provolone and Gruyere is a 10 out of 10, Swiss is a 8 out of 10. Gouda was just bland. Maybe if you went out of your way to get a nicer one, this would be a better option, but basic pre-sliced Gouda has no perceivable flavor. 5 out of 10. And finally, basic provolone. This had some good meltiness and a little bit of sharpness, but overall it's just soft white and doesn't really have any flavor. 6 out of 10. Aside from the provolone Gruyere blend, Swiss cheese seems like the next best option. Now once I've got 2 cheese sandwiches built, I'm gonna grab my largest nonstick pan, which is 12 inches. Then I'll drop it on the stove. Heat-wise, I think medium-low is best. This allows for the most even browning and deepest crisping. Also, the ideal pan temperature is somewhere in the ballpark of 300 to 315. Okay, once the pan is heated through, I'm gonna carefully lower in one side of the sandwich along with the stack of cheeses. Another way I know my pan is in the right temp zone is the butter starts to melt and sizzle within about 2 seconds of being in the pan. Then I'm gonna take my silicone spatula and press the sandwiches firmly into the pan to ensure even contact. This is where putting only the first half of the sandwich into the pan is useful. If I put the whole thing in, when I pressed it down, I would get butter smeared all over my spatula. Now I'll fry for about 2 minutes, rotating the sandwich 90 degrees every 30 seconds to make sure things are cooking evenly. After about 3 minutes of total fry time, I'm finally gonna drop the buttered tops on, then check in to see how the bottom looks. As you can see, it looks toasty under here, dude. Oh. Now I'm gonna carefully flip these over and press again for about 30 seconds per sandwich. From here, I'll gently fry on the backside for about 2.5 minutes, rotating 90 degrees every 30 seconds. Rotating ensures that every part of the sandwich is getting in touch with the pan at some point during the frying process. And after 7-ish minutes of slow frying, when I check under side 2, yeah, that is a disgusting amount of browning. It looks so good. Now, an optional final step is to throw the sandwich pan into a 300 oven to bake for 5 minutes while you finish plating up the soup. This is gonna make the cheese super melty and gooey all the way through, and it's gonna crisp up the edges of the sandwich about 10 to 20% more. Now to serve the soup, I'm gonna ladle some into a bowl that I warmed in that 300F oven, then top with some minced chives to bring a touch of fresh green onion flavor, then a little drizzle of olive oil, then behind that a strong pinch of aged grated parm for some salty, nutty cheese flavor, and then finally many cranks of fresh cracked black pepper. And that's a simple but beautiful tomato soup. Let's get a sandwich involved. After a few minutes of supplemental melting in the oven, when I break this thing open, yeah, it's cheesy. Oh my gosh. It looks like raclette. I stand by that this is the perfect blend of cheeses. It gives you everything that you want texturally and flavorally. All that's left now is to dip this thing into the hot soup and enjoy.
Woo! All 3 cheeses here bring something to the party. You've got the dumb melt from the American, you've got the sharp piquant flavor from the provolone, and then you got that nutty aged flavor from the Gruyere. They all come together to play as a band. They're all doing something individually that sounds great, but then when you get them all at the same time, you're like, this is a hit.
If you guys like this video, I'm gonna link to one on the screen right here where I also do some cooking. You like cooking, go ahead and click it. Thanks for watching.